He had few enemies in the world. But as Becker knew, it took only one determined adversary to change your life. Becker folded the paper in half and carried it under his left arm, leaving his right one free to swing the umbrella he carried. It didn't necessarily look like rain today, but the weather person had cautioned folks that morning that a thunderstorm was certainly possible given the recent atmospheric potboilers of heat and humidity. He wore gloves, though the day was not cold. This was the second thing he did that was out of the ordinary, but vanity left him no option. The gloves were black leather and had cost him $200. He considered them well worth the price. The fellow up ahead had his daily rituals. A walk during lunchtime was one of them. From watching him the past 4 days, Becker knew that he would head south down 1 block, turn left, proceed to the park, enjoy the trees and birds, and then retrace his steps and return to his office. Rituals like that were nice, comforting, and completely asinine, Becker knew. He had no such routines. At any given minute of his day, no one would be able to tell where he would be based on the previous day's experience. Most people embraced sameness. Becker raced from it. He knew how deadly routine could be if someone wanted to do you harm. The man slowed. There was a crowd gathered at the corner. It seemed like something of significance was coming down the street, and for this reason the police were holding folks back. Perhaps it was a parade or an official motorcade carrying a suitably important person, important enough indeed to warrant traffic police and clogged intersections. Like a rugby scrum at the corner, folks were massing. Some broke off from this pack and were craning their necks to see who or what was coming. Becker had picked this day based solely on this event happening at this precise moment. The fellow he was watching reached the intersection and joined in the head craning and standing on tiptoes to see over the jostling crowd. As more people packed the spot, it became like a log-filled river with a strained dam ready to burst. The cops sweated and pushed and cursed the citizens into some degree of order. Becker smiled at their plight. He had never much liked cops. His old man had been a policeman after a failed attempt at a career running a butcher's shop in a small town. He'd moved to the city when Becker was still a baby. After he started wearing the blues, he had taken to beating Becker with his nightstick after he came home, and downed a few shots of gin so cheap and strong that it could burn a hole in metal. That and the smokes were his dad's chief vices, other than beating his son while Becker's stepmother looked on, drink in hand, and gave advice on where to hit him next. Becker's real mother, he'd been told, had died at childbirth. That was all he knew. That was more than he ever cared to know, actually. He doubted his real mother would have been any more loving than his stepmother. As the police used their bodies and barricades and the strength of their lungs to keep the human logs back on the curb, Becker angled to the left and stepped further into the crowd. It took him 10 seconds to work his way forward, using pointy elbows and apologetic looks at folks he pushed past. Now he was standing directly behind the man. He checked his watch. He had a contact who'd given him a heads up on this traffic snarling event. In 1 more minute, the limo and the surrounding trucks with bodyguards would be passing by. He edged closer. Before he slipped the newspaper into his coat pocket, he glanced at the date. May 5th, 2000. His birthday was next week. He would turn 50. His celebration would consist of dinner alone, and no presents. He cared for birthdays even less than he did beatings. He counted the moments off in his head. This was really unnecessary because the crowd's collective energy spiked when the motorcade drew within sight of the intersection. He started taking shallow breaths. It was not to control his nerves. For all he knew, he had none. He wanted to reduce his oxygen a bit, to get a